Hello everyone, this is Amit Solanki. Welcome back to the lecture series of PECD. Today I am going to deliver the lecture on the topic of servo mechanism. So first we will discussing about what is the definition of servo mechanism, the automatic control of any physical quantity like position, velocity, displacement, etc. is called the servo mechanism. A servo drive is a special electronic amplifier which is used to power electric servo mechanisms. The word servo means controlling the mechanical position or derivatives of position like velocity and acceleration. It is an automatic device that uses the error sensing, negative feedback to correction of performance of mechanism. So that means the main aim of servo mechanism is to automatic control, the automatic control of any physical quantity. The servo control mechanism uses negative feedback which is used to control the mechanical position, and position control servo mechanism used in hydraulic and pneumatic machines to control their position. It is also used in automatic machine tools, satellite tracking antenna, aircraft system and navigation system. So that means the servo mechanism it used for the precise control of the position, or how many angles are what about the rotation of the angle. So this is the controlling due to the servo mechanism. Now we can explaining the working of servo mechanism by the block diagram. In this block diagram you can observe that there comparator, one is error detector, then controller, then motor, and this is the object, or we can say that load, and this is the feedback signal. So these are the block. According to this block we can explain the working principle of servo mechanism. So how it is work? First, the servo mechanism system primarily it consists of three basic components. One is a feedback system, second one is error detector, and third one is a electric motor. So according to that, if you would like to rotate this object by 180 degree, this object, then how it is work? Suppose we are given here the target of 180 degree, and this signal goes through the error detector, through the controller. The controller is any one of like Arduino, microcontroller or PWM techniques. Many more controllers are available, and after that this signal goes to the motor, and finally the output is obtained by shaft of this motor. And if here we are getting the 90 degree, remember that we required 180 degree, but we are getting here 90 degree at this output side of the motor, at the shaft. Then what will happen? Then this signal goes toward the feedback signal, or this is the position sensor, or we can say that if we are using here DC motor, then we can use here potentiometer, And if we are using here AC motor for wide range of applications, so we can use encoder. So from this shaft it can sense and gives to this signal to the comparator, and it compare the output signal and input signal. So there is difference, or there is generated the error signal, and this error signal is given to the controller. And controller, what will the action of controller? Control signal or controller block control the signal and manage or control according to their requirement and gives to the motor. And finally we are getting here the 180 degree. Again this signal goes towards the feedback signal, and here is comparator, and it can difference, and their difference is 0, then it will stop. So this is the overall process of our overall mechanism of the servo mechanism. So that means the servo mechanism generally used to rotate or controlling the position of any object. So this is the main function of servo mechanism. Now we are discussing about the servo motor, because in servo mechanism there is the main part is that is the motor, and the motor which have to provide the function of servo mechanism, that is called the servo motor. A servo motor is a simple electric motor which is controlled with servo mechanism. It is a rotary actuator or linear actuator that allows for precise control of angular or linear position or velocity and acceleration. The motor can be either DC or AC, or it can be of single or three phase. The DC motor can be brushed or brushless, but the BLDC motor are more expensive, so therefore the drives are more complex but are more reliable and maintenance free. The feedback device of servo motor is typically an encoder or a resolver built into the motor frame. The control circuitry is a motion controller and a drive to supply the power to the motor. And in this diagram you can observe that this is the overall functioning of part of servo mechanism. There is servo motor, there is gear, these are gears, and these are the control circuitry, and these are the potentiometer. So these are the whole parts. The combination of these whole parts is known as servo mechanism. The servo motor is generally two types. One is AC servo motor and second one is DC servo motor. If motor is control device associated with servo mechanism is DC motor, then it is commonly known as DC servo motor. And if we are operating the AC motor, then it is known as AC servo motor. First we will discussing about the working and construction of AC servo motor. So in this figure, this is the schematic diagram of AC servo motor. It provides fast precision position control for closed loop applications. Now, in this block diagram you can see that the AC servo motor, there are stator winding and rotor winding. The stator winding is divided in two parts. One is reference winding and second one is control winding, or we can say that the reference winding get the signal from the constant AC supply, and the control winding gets the AC signal from the servo amplifier, and this is the rotor between them. These two windings are these two stator windings are displaced from 90 degree. If we want to change the rotation or direction of the motor, so for that we would like to change the phase difference between two stator winding. So due to that we can change the rotation of the motor. So this is the function of AC servo motor. Now we will discussing about the closed loop position control of AC servo motor. So how AC servo motor is used for controlling the position control by the closed loop system. So that is the block diagram of closed loop position control of AC servo motor. In this diagram you can see here there is set position point, controller, then amplifier, then servo motor, then gear, and this is the load, or we can say the object being controlled, and this is the position transducer, or we can say the feedback signal. Now according to this block diagram, the shaft of AC servo motor is coupled to the object to be controlled through a gearbox. The position sensor coupled mechanically to the motor shaft will provide the feedback about the actual position of the object. The controller compares it with the set position is desired position and produces a control voltage to correct the difference. Now the amplifier signal, it amplifies and applies the control voltage to the AC servo motor. Depending on the control signal, the AC servo motor will either continue to rotate in same direction or start rotating in opposite direction to each desired position. Thus the AC servo motor translate the control signal into physical action and act as a actuator. So this is the explanation about the closed loop position control of servo motor. The positioning servo mechanism was first used in military fire control and marine navigation equipment. Now in this diagram you can also observe that the mechanism of the control mechanism of the servo motor through the PWM techniques. In this figure we are giving the pulses. This is the minimum pulses and this is the pulse width is about 1 millisecond. Now the position of object is into 0 degree. As it is, if you are change the width of pulse to about 1.5 to the our object is changed about to the 90 degree. And third one is the if we change the width by 2 millisecond, then our position of object will also change about to the 180 degree. So this is the example of control mechanism of servo mechanism to how to change, how to control the position of any object. So this is the diagram of the variable pulse width control of servo position. Now we are discussing about the closed loop position control of DC servo motor. So according to this block diagram, in this block diagram you can see here DC motor and it is coupled with the gearbox, and the shaft of this gearbox, that is the object here connected, and this is the feedback system, and this is the error amplifier, and again it is given to the DC motor. the working of this block diagram is same as it is. It can apply and it's a servo mechanism. First, the DC motor is connected to the gearbox, and in this the DC motor is controlled by the feedback element is a potentiometer. So that means if the resistance is changed of potentiometer, the voltage, the drop in voltage also change. So according to that, the DC motor change their signal and we are getting the different positions. So the explanation is same as it is. This signal is sensed through this shaft. What is the output is developed and given to the error detector, and it can detect and give the signal to the controller, and it can control the signal and again given to the motor and correct it. So this is the functioning of closed loop position control of DC servo motor. So conclusion is that the main task of servo mechanism is to maintain the output of a system at desired value in the presence of disturbance. So this is the main object or main function of the servo mechanism, to maintain the output of a system at desired value, or we can say that at desired angle, desired position. So however, what will happen in conventional motor or AC motor drives, DC motor drives, we are control only the speed of the motor. But in case of this servo mechanism, the feature of servo motor is to that there is the torque is good. The torque is good. So for that we are controlling a precise object with the help of servo motor. In that servo mechanism, you are also observe that here gearbox is connected to the motor. The main aim or main function of connection of gearbox is to reduce the RPM and increase the torque. So this is the main phenomena of servo mechanism and servo motor. Now we will discussing about some applications of servo motors. First one, that is the robotics. A servo motor at every joint of robot is used to actuate movements, giving the robot arm its precise angle. That means in this application their servo motor is used. So in every joint of robotics we are giving some angles, and it can move right, left, up and down by the feature of servo motor. Second one is conveyor belts. The servo motors moves, stop and start conveyor belts carrying product along to various stages. For example, in product packing, bottling and labeling. As you seen in many industries, there are packing, labeling, our whole things are governed by the automatic or through the drive system. So this is easy as compared to human operate, and it will be accurate. So for that we are using the servo motor. Third one is camera autofocus. So a highly precise servo motor built into the camera to correct a camera's lens to sharpen out of the focus images. The next application is to robotic vehicle, commonly used in military applications and bomb detonation. The servo motor control the wheel of the robotic vehicle, generating enough torque to move, stop and start the vehicle smoothly, as well as control its speed. Next application is solar tracking system. In this system, the servo motor adjusts the angle of solar panels throughout the day so that each panel continue to face the sun, harnessing maximum energy from sun up to sundown. Next applications to metal cutting and metal forming machines. In this case, the servo motor provide precise motion control for milling machines, lathe, grinding, centering, punching, pressing and bending in metal fabrications for such items as jar leads to automotive wheels. Next one is antenna positioning. Servo motors are used on both the azimuth and elevation drive axis of antennas and telescopes such as those used by the National Radio Astronomy Observatory. Next one is woodworking or CNC. The servo motor control wood turning mechanism as a lathe that shape table legs and stair spindle, for example, as well as augering and drilling the holes necessary for assembling those products later in the process. Next one is textile. In textile, the servo motor control the industrial spinning and weaving machines, looms and knitting machines that produce textiles such as carpeting and fabrics, as well as wearable items such as socks, caps, gloves and mittens. And next one is printing press or printers. The servo motors stop and store the print heads precisely on the page, as well as move paper along to print multiple rows of text or graphics in exact lines, whether it is a newspaper, a magazine or annual report. Now last application is to automatic door openers. Door openers you are also observed in many supermarkets, malls and hospital entrance are prime example of the automated door openers controlled by the servo motors. Whether the signal to open is via push plate beside the door for handicapped access or by radio transmitter position overhead. So these are the overall applications of servo motor and overall explanation of servo mechanism. So thank you so much.